Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and leave some feedback. Welcome and thanks for being here. As advertised, I'm here with my man, Rob, Sports Card Therapist, Part 2. What's going on, Rob?
Ken. I tell you what, man, it is nice being able to drop 2 episodes in a row with you. We dropped on Thursday, now we're dropping on Tuesday. Let's go. Let's give the people what they really want, and that's just 2 friends talking hobby. I tell you, one of the best pieces of feedback I ever get, and I could really give the feedback to you too, is that, um we never are pumping cards. We never are recommending or referring cards. It's just us talking about our experiences, the cards we're collecting, things that we are seeing at shows, which doesn't make it all the truth, right? Because it's really just our opinions and
Yeah.
and we all, if 7 people watch a car accident, you're going to have 7 different opinions on what you're seeing, but it's really nice to be able to have a platform that you can just kinda give your point of view on things.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you just said, everybody has a different point of view, but not a lot of people can put it out there, right? I honestly believe it just takes a special person to be able to get on here, get on the mic, and just put your thoughts together and just put good content out there. And you know, being a retired teacher, to me, it's always like, I always feel like I'm teaching. I always feel like I spent my whole life trying to write lesson plans and just thinking outside of the box all the time. So as I sit and do this, anything that I think that I see that I think that could be important, it could be a teachable moment, anything like that. I want to put it out there, and certainly it's not what cards to buy, right? Because we're all finding our own way. With our PC, I mean, especially me in my PC, what I'm doing. I've been a little bit all over the place, because I set up at shows and I have a PC as well. Um, and I think I'm starting to settle in a little bit on when it comes down to cards, and you too, right? You've been at this longer than I have, and all of a sudden these last, I'm going to say, month or 8 weeks, 6 7 weeks, right, you've really started getting into these uh you know in-person autoed cards, and now that's what you're all about. We spend time together. I see, where you're showing me your pickups, you're showing me what you're getting, and that's everything now is these hand signed cards.
Yeah, and I tell you one really cool thing about it. So I always hear people talk about, and by all means, anytime I talk about vintage cards, I never want one of my points to be putting down modern. That's not what I'm trying to do, because I truly believe that vintage cards can stand on their own. But what I would say is a big knock on vintage is that, well, there's so many of them produced. There's 700, Willie Mays autos. There's 3,000 Willie Mays rookies out there that are graded with PSA and blah, blah, blah. And the good thing about vintage cards is not all cards are created equal. And second of all, when you add an on card signature to a card, that takes the pop from maybe being about 2,000 down to under 200. And talk about the mystique of having a player hold that card in their hand. There's a reason why the hobby favors on-card autos much more than sticker autos, and that's because we know that the player has held that card, and there is a certain mystique about that. But to get back to what you're saying about Philly, let me tell you something. Philly was the absolute sports card lessons theme, because I learned so many lessons by going there with you as a walker and not a dealer.
Mm.
So many lessons. I almost feel like to an extent, I've either been spoiled or blinded by always setting up behind the table. And it was really nice to be on the other side of the table and see how dealers act and what dealers say.
Yeah, here's the thing. We set up at shows. We get there early, right? We do this. We've been doing this since we started setting up. We want to get there. What time the doors open? 6:30. All right, let's plan to get there like 6:30, between 6:30 and 7, even though the show doesn't start till 9 o'clock, right? We get in, we set up, we walk around, we have one-on-one time with other dealers where, we get to look in these cases. We're not fighting with anybody. Um, we go to local shows and we walk those shows. We're on the other side of the table. There's a lot of people there, but you can get in and you can get your one-on-one time with the dealer. You see a card, we can sit, we can negotiate a little bit. They take my case, or you take your case and put it on my case. Let's open it up and look at it. But man, when you get into a show like Philly, and it's just so crowded in there, right? Just
Well
so.
well, and the thing is, not to cut you off, but these local shows, right? If you're a regular fixture at a local show, if you've set up there at least a few times or you've gone there and walked at least a few times, I hate to say it, but you basically know most of the people at the show. You either know most of the dealers and their inventory, or you know most of the people walking. You know for a fact, you know who's a buyer, who's not. You basically know them like the back of your hand. So I think that there is something refreshing about doing a little bit of traveling to get to a show.
Mm,
So you and I, we traveled. The first half of the show was basically in a snowstorm, right? It was rain, it was snow all
yeah,
throughout Connecticut, all throughout New York,
yeah.
and we made a 3.5 hour drive each way trek.
Mm,
And really, that was because we said, you know what? Let's get out. I don't want to say get out of our comfort zone. And I heard you say that in one of your last episodes. Not so much getting out of your comfort zone, but really just let's get outside of the area and see what else is out there. I knew I was really excited about going down there because I've always heard that Philly, that show is a hub for vintage cards. So I was super excited about going down there. But we had a great drive going down there. I mean, we didn't have any music on. We weren't listening to anything. We literally just talked for 3.5 hours. We probably could have recorded three incredible podcasts in the time of what we were talking. Because for the most part, yeah, we're talking about some family. Yeah, we're talking about some of this and that. But for the most part, we're talking about really good hobby stuff. And the hobby stuff that we're talking about, I'm getting educated on in the moment. So I know that the listeners would be intrigued to hear what we had to say.
mm. Yeah, I mean, we both collect something different, right? I mean, you and I are both kind of I mean, our lanes come together, but they're kind of different. So,
Which is
you know,
awesome.
yeah, which is great. So, then I get in the car and I'm start talking about, RPAs and XRCs and things like that. And, some hockey cards, some Ovechkin cards, maybe some Gretzky, right? And now all of a sudden you start bringing the vintage talk and you're talking about, these cards that are so the Uncle Jimmy cards, and we're having a whole conversation about, so it's really, I think we both are educating each other,
Yeah.
on these rides, but yeah, no, it's definitely a great ride. Yeah.
And a big part of the reason, and I want to say shout out to our good friend Jeremy Lee from Sports Card Live. Just last week he posted a reel when he was talking about really the importance of having people in your life that do cards, and he literally name dropped the Wolfpack. He said a good friend Rob Gerard always talks about find your wolf pack. And I completely agree with that.
Mhm.
Find your wolf pack. Like find someone. Your wolf pack can be you and one person, but find that someone that you feel like you just click with, that you guys can do stuff with. that you can go to a show with. If
Mm,
you're not sure if you guys are gonna be cool or not, or sometimes it's weird, right? It's like when you're an adult, it's almost like asking a guy out on a date, right? But it's like, why not just hit up that person, shoot a DM on Twitter or Instagram if you guys know you're both local, say like, "Hey, I'm actually thinking about hitting up that show in Providence. If you wanna meet up, I'll drive." You know what I mean? Just shoot out an invitation
yeah,
like that, and
mhm,
that's how it starts. But
yeah,
it's so important to find your wolf pack. Because let me tell you something, if it wasn't for you, Ken, I really don't think I would have made that drive all the way down to Philly by myself and all
mm,
the way back.
mm. And I would've, 'cause that's the kinda guy I am, right? But you know what? How great is it to be able just to find somebody who wants to do and has the ability to do the same thing and will find a
Yeah,
way to do the same thing. I mean, we're our lives are at completely different stages, right? But we're always finding the time to get together and get to these shows. So, I don't know many excuses that keep people away, from really finding somebody who is willing, who's local and willing to, do what we do, get in the car and head to these shows. And yeah, I think for both of us, you said you wouldn't have taken that drive. I would have, because that's who I am. But um I think overall, would we both be here without each other? I don't think so. I
yeah,
don't think either of us would be here, and I think what started with a hobby became a very good friendship, and, a lot of other things,
yeah.
all came together for like a perfect storm.
Absolutely. You coming to my 40th birthday surprise party, me being there watching you empty out your house and move into a new one, me calling your wife a bee on speakerphone, yeah, which is still one of the funniest moments of our friendship. "Are you still with that bee, Sherry?" She's like, "What?" I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't know she was in the car." But yeah, no, it was definitely good, man.
Yeah.
So we get to the Philly show and, we both have some connections and we're both able to get into, early setup, which is good, which, by the way, let me just say this, okay? I really do think that instead of really trying to reach out and ask for favors, I think that promoters like probably should bring a couple content creators into the show early to just do some filming, get some footage and talk to dealers because all they're going to do is that's basically a commercial for your show.
Yeah.
So I think the fact that we had to kind of go around and find some early entry passes, to me that was kind of whack. Like I think that if I was running a show, I would probably wanna know, like, "Hey, are there any people that wanna come in early during dealer setup and film?" Maybe interview me being the person putting on the show, like,
Mhm.
just, like, be smart like that, I don't know. Am I wrong in that thinking?
No, absolutely right, 100%. But I think what happened, and we do that with these local shows,
Yeah,
right? We 100% we do it with the local shows. But I think these bigger shows, there's so much going on. I mean, I understand it's free advertisement, but do you think the Philly show needed advertisement? And I mean, I think that's kind of where the mindset is. You're 100% right. And I think, yeah, they probably should put out, maybe 10, 12 badges for people that like media people or just people that are content creators that you could just say, hey, can you have a badge waiting for me? I'd like to get there an hour early or 2 hours early and go in, like you said, interview, do some recording, and then we'll throw it right up there. We'll throw it on Instagram live or Facebook live, whatever, wherever you.
yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree. Yeah, I would agree. Um, so we get in there, we're walking around. Immediately, I'm loving what I'm seeing. Immediately, I am seeing a lot of vintage. And one cool thing I'm seeing is me being a vintage guy. I tell you, I am seeing so much raw vintage. And I actually spoke with a dealer and he said, I refuse to put a graded card in my case because I truly believe that grading companies have ruined the hobby. Now, I feel like you could probably have a nice panel discussion with a couple people making that point and a couple people defending the grading companies. But I mean, he makes an interesting point. But at the end of the day, I think the hobby as a whole has decided this is, I guess, the fairest way that we have, even though it might not always be the most accurate grades, it is the fairest way to have an idea of the value of a card.
You know what? When it comes to the grading companies, I know a lot of people complain, and there's just so many videos out there. People say, "Oh, I cracked it and I resent it back in, and I got a better grade." Well, did you send it the first time? First of all, was the card prepped properly, and did you prep the card properly the second time? I think what happens is, with the grading companies, you can't knock them, right? I think they're trying to, you know, come up with the same grade for the same card, and now they have to balance it. If we've got 100 of these cards, what was the best and what was the worst? But what happens if we're grading these cards now and then 2 years from now we get another 50 of those same cards? Do we base it on what the earlier cards were? Do we base it on what we're seeing now? So I think they just have an overall. So I think if you say you get a 4 on a vintage card, right? I think most vintage cards, that are the same are probably going to be maybe one may get a 5, maybe one may get a 3, but I think for the most part they're probably all going to be 4s. So, when you see this, you always hear a lot of people say, how did that get a 3 or how did that get a 4? That looks so much better, right? But honestly, I think if we opened that stuff up, if we cracked that card open and we sent it back, it would probably come back the same grade. And it may look great to us, but there may be something to the naked eye we just couldn't see right away on the card. I'm not a guy that's gonna. I use the grading companies, right? That's I'm happy to use them. I'm sending tons of cards in, and for what I'm doing, I think the grading helps. It helps me, it helps the person that as a dealer, it helps the buyer on the other side buy the card. What you're doing in vintage is completely different, right? Because there's a thing now that I learned called eye appeal, right? So you may have a 3 and a 6, and the 3 may have a better eye appeal than the 6, and you'd rather buy the 3 because it has better eye appeal, right? That's a whole other vintage thing that's going on.
Yeah, and that's something that I love about vintage is the fact that with modern, the comps are the comps, right? There's really no escaping that. Now, if there's any negotiation to be had, good luck with that. The comps are the comps, especially these high pop report cards. Now, when it comes to vintage, not every vintage comp is created equal. I think that a comp on a vintage card is probably 15 to 25% of the equation. There's very big arguments to be made for centered cards. You know, um, I have my Mickey Mantle, and I'll show it to you guys right now. There is a so this Mickey Mantle card, it's a 4. It's graded a 4, which means it's incredible condition, great registration, great edges, great corner wear, right? I mean, this thing looks incredible. But it's graded a 4 with a qualifier of a miscut because as you can see, it's not centered. So it's a 4 miscut. And there are plenty of 4 miscut comps over the last 6 months or so that are anywheres between 12 to 20K. But the thing is, there are people that would prefer a PSA 1 that maybe is a bit dirtier. The edges aren't as sharp and the corners are more rounded as long as it's more centered.
Mhm,
So, centering typically in vintage cards trumps all for most people.
mhm,
So, it is what it is. And that's why I love vintage because there's so much that goes into it. Comps are literally just a small part of it. whereas with modern, it's definitely not. But one thing that I noticed, and it could be just because of the stuff that I'm buying, I'm realizing the stuff that I'm buying, and like the stuff that I showed you last week, right? The stuff that I showed you on last week's episode, the Elvin Hayes rookie. He's a Hall of Famer on card auto. The Dr. J rookie on card auto. All these different on card autos that I'm buying, this Bill Russell 1961 on card auto, all these different cards I'm buying, these are super niche. They're super niche, which means I would probably have to walk up to I could walk up to 50 tables and probably only 5 of them would have major interest in those cards.
Mhm.
But the thing is, those people that are interested in those cards, they know what those cards are. Those are big cards to have. Those are big cards to own. They're low pop cards. There's almost none available. I mean, there were probably 4 cards that I brought with me that I can guarantee I was the only one in the show with that card.
Mm. Now, when you're setting up as a dealer, right? That's where you want to be. That's where I want to be. I want to be the guy in the room that's got cards that nobody else in the room has.
Yeah.
But when you show up to walk a show, right? You need to start hunting for the guy that's got that you think may be interested in those, niche cards.
Yeah. And I tell you, there was only one dealer there that had vintage, a ton of signed vintage. That's all he had were signed vintage, right? So I'm looking through some of his cards and he's high on some of his prices. I pull out a Reggie Jackson rookie. It was authentic, PSA authentic with an auto grade of a 10. I said, "How much for this Reggie Jackson?" He said $1,000. So in my mind, I'm thinking that's probably a good price, right? It's probably a good price. I start looking up comps and literally PSA authentic graded with 10 autos, with a 10 grade auto that looked just as nice as that card, same inscription and everything, like the last 5 of them. You know what they sold for? Like 350.
Wow.
And so I said, I'm the king of telling people
I'm
straight up,
high.
like, I'm high on my
I'm
cards.
high.
Like, I'm high on the card. Like, I don't wanna start making excuses or play, like, dumb, and like, "Oh, whoa, it is? What? Oh, I guess I haven't looked at comps in a while." Like, I don't wanna be that guy because A, it makes you look like either you have no idea what you're doing and you're clueless, or B, it looks like you're straight up trying to deceive me. So, first thing I'll say is, "Listen, I'm high on this card, I'm letting you know." Even before I give them my price, I'll say that, because I'm not motivated to move this card. So, what I said to the guy was, I said, "Listen, um," and he's like, "Well, yeah, that probably had a different inscription." I'm like, "Nope, look, same centering, same inscription." I said, and oftentimes I'm always throwing people like a life raft. If like I can feel them drowning in their like BS, I'll throw them a life raft. And I say, "Listen, if you're high on your cards, I get it. I'm high on some of mine too." So like that's me throwing them a life raft, is like, "Listen, I get it." I said, "Well, listen, knowing that this card is selling for between 300 and 350, what's the lowest you could go?" Because I did want to leave with that card. I wanted to leave with something. Um, and he goes 850. And I said, "I appreciate it. Thank you." And
Mm.
the thing is, when you meet a dealer like that, and so if you think about that, I realize that I'm after somewhat rarer cards, but he was literally 3x over comps.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean that becomes an issue, right? And you're looking for particular cards, and I think we were both in the same boat, right? Because I went there looking for football. We talked about this the whole way down. You were looking for vintage. I was looking for football,
Yep.
and I know it was the same thing with the football cards, right? I mean, I was able to walk that room uh, before the doors opened because we were there a little early, and I was able to go scout out a handful of cards that I would be interested in. I didn't even know the prices yet, but I knew the cards and I knew where they were. And before the 9 o'clock, I just wanted to hit those those 5 and asked them, and on all of them, they were way over comps on the football, and they said, "You know what? Football's over, football's down now, I have to stick with this comp," but I said, "You know, when I'm looking." I'll give you just a for instance, the card was $1,000, right? He wanted $1,000. The last comp on that card was say 580. But when I looked all the way back October, September, October, November, that card was selling all at that price, 550, 580, 590. So football season's over, but it should be, it shouldn't have doubled in price until the next football season. It's not like it would, or I would think it would, and if I could get a decent deal on it, I would. We both showed up with cash and cards, right?
We both had a pocket full of cash, and we both had a Zion box full
Yeah,
of cards.
yeah, yeah, and after I went through the football and I realized I wasn't gonna get any football, then I eased my way into, looking at some hockey cards, and, I had a similar situation than you did, but it was on a mu it was on a Connor McDavid card that, I said, "Hey," and I've seen this dealer before. I said, "Hey, what's the price on that?" He goes, "It's 1,400." He goes, "That one's numbered. That one's numbered to 199." I said, 14? I said, "That sounds a little high." So I took the phone out and I took a picture of it, and the last one sold at $302, but before that they were selling it about 6 or 700. And he said, you can't go by that 300." I said, I won't, but we're still twice as much. The comp on this is twice as much. And he said, "Yeah, yesterday was a really busy day." He said, "I'm hoping for, another busy day today." So he kind of led on to me that he raised all his prices because Friday was a busy day for him, and he felt he could have gotten more for the cards. And I don't know if that's why the prices were higher in the room on Saturday when we got there, or they were just generally high, to begin with. But um
See, I think my concern is this, right? My concern is that, like, I personally love going to car shows. I love setting up at card shows. I will not have a problem paying 5 to 10% over comps at a card show, right? Even 15 to 20% over comps. This Dr. J rookie auto that I just showed that you can see sitting behind me, this Dr. J rookie auto, I paid about 30% over comps. I knew I could probably go online somewhere and get this card for probably about 30% cheaper. Now, I just made a couple big sales. I was at a show. I was feeling good. And I'm like, screw it. I'm going to make this guy an offer. He wanted 2 grand for that. And, comps were like 1,000, so, I ended up making him an offer, I think for 1,200. And he said, sure, I'll take it. So I know I could have gotten it cheaper. I have no problem paying 10 to maybe 20% higher because
and is
I'm
this on
definitely
vintage now or just on cards in general?
no, I think just in cards in general, just in cards in
Mm,
general. Because here's the thing, I definitely agree with the adage that if everyone is always buying under comps, eventually all comps will go to zero.
mm,
And I do want card shows to exist and I want card shows to thrive. My concern is if card dealers are literally selling cards at double or triple what they're going for online, I have 0 reason to buy anything at a card show.
mm,
I have 0 reason other
yeah,
than to walk the room and see people, because
mm,
what it feels like is that it's really hard to get a deal done at card shows. But that goes back to my quote, participation is required. Because I think that if you hit up enough dealers, you are going to find dealers that are motivated to move, because not all dealers have iron hands or diamond hands.
mm,
Some dealers are showing up and they're saying to themselves, I need to make 2 to 3 grand today. I don't know how I'm gonna make it, but I need to make 2 to 3 grand, and there are deals to be had. Some dealers will sell their cards at 70 to 80% of comps.
Mm.
And I know
Hey,
that kinda contradicts what I'm saying of paying over, but I'm not gonna pay over comps if I don't have to. Point being, I still think there's great reason to go to shows.
mm,
We need shows.
yeah,
We need shows, and for a while, I was thinking that we needed LCS's, local card shops, and I still do to an extent, but I'm not sure how many LCSs are gonna be around when Fanatics really takes over, and that's a scary thing.
yeah. I just wanna before we jump talk about that, I just wanna jump back. As a dealer, if someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, this is the last comp. Will you take it for that card?" 100% I'm taking the last comp, and that never happens as a dealer, right? I mean, how many times does somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, the last comp on this card was blah. I'll pay you 100% of the last comp." It just never happens. They say the last comp was here. This is my offer. I want to go below it. When I show up at a show and I know what I'm looking for, especially football this time of year, I'm willing just to pay comps. I'm willing to be that guy to say, "Hey, the last comp on this card was $712. I mean, I'll give you 700 for it right now." But I'm not going to give you 850 for a card that the last comp was 700, right?
Mhm.
And that's just who I am. So when I show up at a show and like this show with a pocket full of cash and a Zion box full of cards, right? I'm coming here. I want to make deals. I'm coming in. I want to make deals. I'm prepared to pay what comps are on a card. And I felt that this weekend I couldn't do that. I just I couldn't get to a place um where I was just paying what the actual comp was on a card. And jumping into your other question with Fanatics, yeah, I mean, I would love to open up an LCS, right? Just give me one more thing to do, right? Besides all the other things I do in my life, right? But when I went down to North Carolina and to visit my daughter, and I went to the Cardiacs Cards down there. It's the LCS, and that place was just rocking on a Saturday morning. Just car full of the parking lot was full of cars. People were in there, and his allocation on wax is what drives all the people, which drives his customer base. Everybody was in there. He's got tables. You go in there and open up the wax. People are buying hobby boxes left and right. It was like a frenzy for these boxes in there on a Saturday morning. I thought to myself, if I could figure out a way to do that here where I live, 100% I would do it. But there's no way to do that. I had a friend that had an LCS up the street, right? And he was asking me, "Hey, when you're at Target, when you're at Walmart, if there's anything good there, just buy it and I'll pay you for it." Because he just wanted to put wax on his shelves because he couldn't get it from anybody else. So yeah, I think the Fanatics is gonna even hurt even these really successful LCSs.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of, so Michael Rubin from Fanatics was at the Philly show. Let me just say the Philly show was packed, it was mobbed. It did seem like that is the way you do a show. Whatever it is they did it right. They have absolutely no power over what dealers are selling at, right? All they know is they're getting in dealers, and the place was packed, the place was mobbed. There was a great variety of cards there. I know, I bumped into a bunch of people. I even had my guy Sasha P. He hit me up about 10 minutes before he got there, asked me if I wanted Chick-fil-A. That was cool. That's the second straight show where someone's bought me Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I got Chick-fil-A brought to me, remember at the Mohegan show?
Uh,
Mohegan Sun
yeah,
Casino?
I was right next to you, Rob. Both times I'm next to you while you were eating your Chick-fil-A.
Dude,
Moving right
listen,
along.
and so that was cool, man, and, definitely got to see Cousins, got to see the
Yeah,
Cousins from the Wolfpack, got to see the Commish. The Commish is an incredible guy. You and I have talked about how likable the Commish is.
yeah.
I know you got to see Sports Car Dad. I did not get a chance to see him.
Yeah, we
Um
we we ran into each other. You gotta remember the place was packed. It was hot in there, right? And and we were literally passing by, and the funniest thing I said to him was, I didn't realize you were as tall as you were, and he wasn't incredibly tall, right? It was just, when we talk with people like this, we're all sitting down. Nobody has any idea how tall or short anybody is. And,
Yeah.
I'm not a tall person to begin with. So if you're taller than me, it doesn't mean you're tall. You're just taller than me. And yeah, it was just, yeah. And, we chatted for a little bit, but it was like, it was so crowded in there. There was nowhere really to go, like to say, hey, let's go stand over here and talk or go there. I mean, it was just between those rows, there was a lot of people in there and it was hot. Yeah.
Yeah, a
So,
lot of people. There was a lot of vintage. There was a lot of big money there. SGC was there. I actually submitted a card for a potential crossover, so I'm going to see how that goes.
mm,
I probably should have submitted. I really, if I would have thought about it, I would have submitted this Cassius
that's good.
Clay,
Yeah.
this Hemit's Journal Cassius Clay rookie, just to get it re-slabbed so I can get it in a new SGC holder. But there was so much going on, I really didn't have a ton of time to think. But yeah, I mean, overall though, I can't say anything bad about that Phillies show, other than the vendors seemed a little bit high, but that has nothing to do with the promoters itself. The promoters itself put out an incredible show. So definitely shout out to them, salute to them. The hobby definitely feels alive and well. There were a lot of different people there that made the show. But I think one lesson that I've learned really, and this goes back to you with your lessons learned, is that that vintage cards, there's nothing wrong with vintage cards being raw. I saw, you know, it felt like the show was 60% vintage, and out of that 60%, I would say probably at least half of it was completely raw. And, it's you want I get it, you wanna know what grade you're getting on a card, but it's a nice little reminder because I do have a lot of raw vintage, and I'm kind of caught up in that new school way of thinking like, well, I'll get the most bang for my buck when it comes to grading. But you know what? A lot of these vintage guys, even a lot of the vintage customers, they don't necessarily want to buy graded cards. I ended up buying a graded card for it was a 1951 Bowman graded card, and since I'm set building, I'm cracking it out and I'm just going to put it in my binder. So, a lot of set builders with vintage, and I don't know.
Yeah. And of course, with me, what I collect, I mean, I just like it graded because it's authenticated.
Yep.
I know it's real, and I have an idea of the grade. Like I don't mind if it's going into my PC. I don't mind if it's an 8, an 8.5, right? It doesn't need to be a 10 to go into my PC, but it's authenticated. It's real, right? So, I know I can gauge what the price is on it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, before we wrap up, what do you have going on? What is going on in the world of Ken, aka Sports Card Lessons? Whether if it's a upcoming shows, upcoming trips, PCs.
Well, I've got we I talked a little bit about it on the last episode that I worked out a deal. When I do get that card, when I have it in hand, I will talk about that. But that's going to be a pretty big card for my PC. Um, this is March, probably going to walk a Plainville show, I think, this weekend, and walk a New Britain show the following weekend, and April, we have Springfield. We have a show in Springfield. We have a show in Hofstra. I think I have 3 shows in a row, right? We have Springfield, Hofstra, and then I am going to the Toronto show in April too. I
Wow.
Yep, I've already got my flights, my hotel. I'm ready to go for Toronto, so I'm excited about that show. Yeah, just a lot of I'm just staying really busy. I bought some equipment. I'm figuring out how to use it. I'm hoping to do a little vlogging, with some of these trips coming up and some of these shows. Just trying to figure out new ways to bring the hobby to the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, sports card therapist? What do you have coming up?
Well, I know that we are setting up at in Springfield at the New England card show in Springfield, Connecticut, and I know that I'm going to be hosting a another panel discussion at the Basketball Hall of Fame in Springfield, and I know that you are going to be a member on that
Yeah,
panel, which is really cool.
yeah.
Have some big names that are going to be coming on. I'm going to be announcing those names within the next few weeks. Um, yeah, and I'm really just trying to gear up for national. I know that national is still what 4 months away, 4 months and 2 weeks away, but that's only 1/3 of a year. That's going to go
Yeah.
really quickly, and especially with these summer months coming up, how quickly that these months pass by. So,
Mhm. Gives
yeah,
us plenty of
just having a
time
lot
to
of
stock up.
what was it?
Plenty of time to stock up, right?
Definitely.
Get what we need for national. Yeah.
Definitely, and I know that you and I have talked, and we've talked about when we're making purchases and when we're going to shows, and you've talked about how, and forgive me if I'm paraphrasing, you can correct me, but you talk about how when you are shopping primarily for inventory, and that's what you're looking for. And for me, I'm shopping primarily for personal collection, primarily for PC, and don't get me wrong, I do get slabs that I know are strictly inventory, but a lot of times that's just so I have something in my case,
Mm.
because I have a nice bottom row of stuff and it's all PC and it's all not for sale, but I don't want to have a bottom row that's not for sale and then I want then a bunch of base slabs, so I still want to be able to have some stuff because it is fun setting up. It's
Yeah.
fun setting up, and it's not even about getting the deals and buying, selling, and trading. I mean, it's partially that, but really it's about meeting with the people and talking with the people, and it's cool because a lot of these customers and that walk the show, they even if they don't buy anything from you, I mean, a lot of them say I've heard them say it to you, they say it to me, they're like, "Is it weird that it feels like we really know you guys and you don't know us at all, but because we listen to the podcast, we really know you."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, it is a little strange, but it's also really cool, and it's really humbling, and I wouldn't prefer any other way."
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? It's great too is when people start reaching out. And I know you've this been happening to you for a while now. It's been happening to me for a shorter time, but you start to get to know these people, right? They start reaching out. They show you their pickups and they ask questions and what you think about this and what do you think about that. So when you do run into them in the shows, you already know kind of what they have in their case or what they collect. Some of the conversations you've had with them and at the beginning I'd have all these people coming up saying, "Hey, I love the pie," and I would just shake their hands like, "Thanks for listening." Right now that come up, I'm more on a first name basis, or even if not, their Instagram name basis, and I know what they collect, and you know uh in this hobby, you attract what you're doing. So a lot of hockey people are starting to hit me up for things with hockey, and obviously you with your vintage, so it's kind of cool. So you have the different layers of friendships now in the hobby. And I wanted to jump back a minute too, and it's interesting. And I mentioned this once before. I think it's when maybe when I did a Wolfpack episode with Carmine, though, about when it's interesting when we do go shopping, right? I'm always shopping for what I'm going to put in my case. Like, I'm thinking of national. What am I going to bring out there? Like that type of thing. And we talked about this in the ride on the way down. You're like, yeah, no, I'm vintage. This is all for me. I'm going here for me. I want to buy for me. So you concentrate more on your PC. And my thought about that is if I can buy what I want to sell, then I don't have to entertain my PC cards for sale, right? I don't maybe I put them in the bottom so people can see them like you and it will attract people that'll say, "Oh, you collect Mike Tyson, so do I. Let me show you what I have," type of thing. But I want to put enough inventory in my case so I never think about selling my PC cards. Where you're at a situation now where you have more PC cards than inventory. I
And I mean, how often do you hear me say, I feel like every 3 months I, in a way, start to panic, and I'm like, "I have no cards. I have no inventory. I have nothing to put in my case." And so I end up kind of going on, like, a spending spree of cards that I don't even want, which is, like, ass backwards to me because it's, like, not something I wanna be doing. I want all my spending to be very, very methodical with my PC cards. I don't want to be wasting any money, but at the same time, I do want to be able to, have cards that I think like people might want, like a cool card that I just picked up recently that I know I'm going to move and would be cool to have in my PC, but I really don't have any personal connection to it. Is this 2003 Absolute memorabilia Pro Bowl? It's a piece of a Pro Bowl jersey that
Woo, Tom
that
Brady.
Tom Brady wore, and it's only numbered at a 600. And because Tom Brady's been really voted like 20 Pro Bowls, but I think he's only played in one, maybe two. You know what I
Is
mean?
that game?
So,
Is that game worn?
oh yeah, yep, yep. Cut
Nice.
from an
Yeah.
authentic jersey, personally worn by Tom Brady in the 2002 Pro Bowl. This authentic game worn jersey was obtained and guaranteed.
Wow. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure that's pretty
so
rare.
it's
Yeah.
pretty cool, like, talk about rare, right? And it's like, it is kinda hard to comp these cards because even though it's numbered at a 600, these cards usually just don't come up, especially Pro Bowl cards, because there is such a mystique about how many Super Bowls he's played in, and even when he didn't play in a Super Bowl, he often just wouldn't play in the Pro Bowl.
Mm, yeah.
So, it is
He
cards
was
like
already on
this.
vacation.
Exactly, exactly. It is cards like this that, I like to, kinda have, everything from, so, like the Tom Brady, then I have the Dak Prescott, rookie, which is numbered out of 99, then I have the Lamar Jackson XRC, then I have the, Tony Romo auto. It's a prison auto, which is kinda cool. Magic Johnson, Messiah auto. So, I like to have like cool things like that, I guess, that are considered, I guess, like low to mid end. But in all reality, I want to move these to move up into a PC card, rinse and repeat.
Mm, yeah,
So,
yeah.
a lot of my cards now I've owned for, you know, coming up on 2 years,
Mm,
or, year and a half, and with no plan to move them unless it's to upgrade the grade.
yep. And you'll be proud of me. That's what I did this week. I moved 4 of my show cards for a PC card.
Nice.
Yeah. So,
Nice.
yeah, I took a lesson right out of the sports card therapist playbook.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, listen, man, this has been great.
Yeah.
Um, back to back episodes, 2 weeks in a row. Something really cool. And I know it's been something that we're going to continue doing. I know we talked about trying
Yep.
to do one episode every 2 weeks, but
Yep.
it's kind of cool to kick it off doing 2 weeks in a row.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, this back to back, the
Yep.
double shot episodes. So yeah, this is good.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So,
Well, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. As always, it was a pleasure having you guys tuning in and listening. And don't forget that however you're listening to this podcast, whether if it's on Ken's Sports Card Lessons or if it's on Rob's Sports Card Therapist, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because sometimes we just drop random episodes that you never know about. So having that notification bell and subscription is key. And I guess that's it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether if you're watching or listening. Don't forget, take care of yourselves and your collection.
and until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you. Take care, Rob.
You too, brother.